if you would introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm Charles Richards. My doctorate's in clinical psychology. I actually originally from North Carolina, but I came out here to do my graduate training, and clearly decided to stay because the consciousness here really kind of supports the direction of my work. I was initially Jungian oriented, loved the work of Carl Jung. And it's beautiful, elegant work, but at the end of the day, because I understood about past lives, karma, and reincarnation, because I had studied metaphysics from the time that I was like right around 15, I started, so I learned about karma, past lives, reincarnation.
Wait, I'm sorry, you were saying 15?
I started studying metaphysics at 15, and I just kept going from there. My initial interest was in, was biology, because I was always kind of science oriented, but I actually wanted I wanted answers to about, okay, why are we really here? What are we here to do? It's not like, at least I was clear, we're not here to just go to school, get a job, have kids, grow old, die, and then what was it all for? What's the point? And that's why I started studying metaphysics at 15, because I wanted answers that, the Catholic elementary school that I was going to when I was in elementary school, the nuns just couldn't answer those questions, at least not to my satisfaction. So finally I started finding those answers for myself, and when I understood that, we're spiritual beings, have physical experience, and we live lifetime to lifetime learning lessons until we eventually develop a degree of spiritual wisdom and are ready to transcend and don't have to come back here, then we go to another level, and then it just continues on. It's a process of spiritual evolution as we develop ourselves to serve the universal cause. Just as when you get enough education, or whatever you get, however much education you choose to get, at a certain point you get a job and you serve the community or society or whatnot, and but initially you got to get a certain degree of education. Well, I kind of understood that that's kind of what lifetimes are like. You get a certain amount of spiritual wisdom from lifetime to lifetime until you understand well enough how to serve the divine cause, in a very conscious and effective way. And so that understanding led me to shift my major from biology to psychology. And I realized immediately that I wanted to be a therapist to help other people kind of figure out the journey that I had to, kind of work to figure out. I thought, well, maybe I can make it easier for other people to understand really why we're here and help them resolve blocks, fears, issues that come up in their life along the way. And so, Jung was on the same page, I thought, with my thinking early on. And so that's why I really focus on Jungian psychology. I was a member of the Friends of Jung here in San Diego, which was an organization of Jungian analysts. And eventually even spoke at the Friends of Jung. Even though I wasn't trained as an analyst, they recognized that my experience, my background with Jung, and at that time I was deep into doing past life work. And they could see that dovetailed with some of Jung's understanding of the archetypes of the collective unconscious and those kind of things. So I remember that first presentation I did at the Friends of Jung was titled Past Life Dreams and Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. And that was a fun talk to give.
So that was the talk that you gave at the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the talk I gave at the Friends of Jung.
Okay.
And so I got to be friends with a lot of the leading analysts, Jungian analysts here, even though I never had, I didn't go to analytic, institute the way a formally trained analyst would do, but still I had enough understanding that they could appreciate where I was coming from. But the beauty of what I learned to do when I started doing past life work was that I could actually have a person come to me with an issue. Let's say they were having panic and anxiety attacks. And certainly it's exciting and interesting to watch their dreams, to look at the, what's going on with the ego, the shadow, the persona, and all of that. At the end of the day, that kind of work can go on for months and years, for a person to really start to get a sense of who they are, or to even resolve the panic and anxiety attack. And I found that I could actually take people that they have panic and anxiety attacks for a reason. Something happened to them either in this life and in my understanding of past life that was affecting them in the present. And if I could identify what that was, what kind of trauma they experienced that was impacting their present life, and resolve that trauma, then the issue would go away. The panic and anxiety attacks would go away. And so that became my focus, and I developed with some mentors who were already kind of doing some past life work, but my emphasis was on doing it in a non-hypnotic way. For instance, Brian Weiss was a pioneer in hypnotic regression, and his book, Many Lives, Many Masters, was groundbreaking. He really opened the public up to that. But he was still using hypnosis, and in my understanding, particularly of metaphysics, was ideally you want to be conscious, not in a trance. You want to be fully conscious to resolve blocks and fears and whatnot. So I actually found a way of doing a non-hypnotic form of past life therapy, where the person's fully conscious, but still they can go back to any place in the present life, between lifetimes, or past lifetimes. Also, it also includes going into the birth and the prenatal. So I actually learned how to clear trauma no matter where it was in one's past, without putting the person in hypnotic trance, but in essence resolve issues that would shift. And it's almost like if somebody has panic and anxiety. I had a guy, for instance, recently who I was seeing. He'd done a lot of therapy, very spiritual guy, but very effective in business. His specialty was business building. But he was with his partner. He was, for whatever reason, he started to have these like chest pains and panic attacks, and it would come mainly when he was getting ready to go to bed. And so he came to me and he said, "Well, this is what's going on with me, Doc. I'm not sure why it's happening. I start to hyperventilate. I start feeling chest pain, and my partner, she's wondering, is it something she's doing?" He was just kind of confused. Why is this coming up? And I could tell it was something that was getting triggered, that was tied to a past trauma. And the first session we did, he went into a past life where he was sort of a rancher. He was out sort of hanging out, not far from his home, and he was single at the time. And there was a herd of horses, wild horses, that kind of got confused. And the next thing you know, he turned around. He heard them coming. He turns around, and one just basically hoofs him in the chest, knocks him over, and just, and this whole herd runs by him, But that horse hoof in the chest, knocked the wind out of him, and he thought, he was on the ground, and he thought, I think I'm okay, I think I can, but he had to actually crawl back to his house. And he just said, I just need some rest. Well, he went back to his house, finally got in his bed, but evidently his chest was crushed, all kinds of, and he actually died.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So we cleared that trauma, and that was one lifetime. Now, sometimes an issue that we have is tied to more than one lifetime. Sometimes there's a series of lives with the same theme. Well, he went to a second lifetime where he was a warrior, with a band of other warriors, and they were in this battle with another group, but this other group far outnumbered them, and he had a shield and a sword, but he just realized, we are totally outnumbered. it's not much we can. So he did the best he can, but he caught a spear in the gut, and that took him out, in that lifetime.
Wow.
So we cleared those traumas, and and each session takes maybe 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. Once we cleared those 2 traumas, he never had any more panic and anxiety attacks. It just went away.
That's amazing. So a couple of things come up when I hear these. First of all, it's fascinating stories. I'm just like, I can just listen to these stories all day. But how much does one of those sessions like? I'm like, I want to do one of those. How much is like cost to do one?
Yeah.
If I wanted to do one.
Well, what I charge is $300 a session, and but the beauty is, and sometimes I think maybe I should charge more, because I'm done with clients very quickly. It takes, if somebody has a specific issue, sometimes we can resolve it in 1 or 2 or 3 sessions, and they're done, instead of months and years. So it's actually very much more cost effective than traditional therapy.
It really
most therapy is set up, it's long term, and I thought, and as I say, I love the Jungian work, working with people's dreams and archetypes. If that stuff can go on for months and years, I mean, analysts are trained just to be a Jungian analyst. Their training analysis, meaning their own analysis, sometimes goes for like 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And that's just to become an analyst. And I thought, that's interesting work, but I don't want to hold people's hands for months and years to help them resolve issues when I can do it like in a few sessions.
Do people need to be sensitive to being brought into these states where they can?
No. I've had people who haven't meditated a day in their life. They just like to party and drink beer, and they haven't read anything about metaphysics or spirituality or anything, but they got an issue. And so they come to me, and if they're willing to just go through the process, then we can resolve the issue. And sometimes they're blown away because they had never even thought that this would be what the issue was related to. Past life. They said, "Doc, you're going to take me into past life?" I said, "Yeah, if you just kind of go with the process." And they'll do that, and they'll come out, and they're just sometimes blown away because, as I said, they haven't been even exposed to those ideas or concepts. But it's like gravity, is if you know the laws of gravity and how to work with it, you get results. And when people say, "Well, I don't necessarily believe in reincarnation," I says, "You don't have to believe. You can see it as a metaphor. As long as you're willing to go through the process, we can get results."
It's an interesting metaphor as you bring up about gravity, because our teachers used to say that. They're like, if your patient doesn't believe in acupuncture, you just tell them, like, "Do you believe in gravity?" It's like, it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. You jump out this window,
it's gonna affect
you. And wow, so what happened in your life that convinced? Like for me, I did read the Bill Weiss Many Lives, Many Masters. That started to shift my paradigm about the afterlife and how real it was. Because before I was like, just kind of I was really fascinated by, I think I was telling you before, like those paranormal TV shows, and I'm like, this is a real thing, like what? And then reading that book was like, okay, wow. But what was the aha moment for you where you're like, okay, this is a real thing, past lives are a thing? Like, was there a moment that was there?
Yeah, but that happened when I was in my teens, and I learned about karma, reincarnation, cosmic consciousness, and meditation. I started meditating. And I started having inner experiences that confirmed it for me. About my own past. For instance, to give you just an idea, I was very interested in martial arts as a kid. In fact, when my father first took me to a karate dojo, I was I don't know, 8, 9 maybe, and immediately I wanted to start. I told my dad I want to take classes, and in those days he just said, "Oh, you're too young, son, to do this." He just thought I was just, it was just a whim, and I was serious about it. And I thought, okay, when I'm old enough, I'm going to take myself. And so I did. I actually, as soon as I could, I actually started taking karate lessons myself. And as I've grown up, growing older, I started with karate, taekwondo. Then I just had a natural knack for it. Then I went from taekwondo to kung fu, and now I do tai chi. But I have seen a past life, and as you can see, my home is very Asian, Japanese, sort of Chinese. I've seen my past life as a samurai, and seen my wife, and seen where we lived, and so I have these strong connections with some of my past lives in Japan and China. And so that's why I was drawn to the martial arts as a little kid, just naturally, because I had been a martial artist in Japan and China. So, those kind of things will reflect in your current life if you know what to look for. You can see signs of your past life history, depending on the things that you're drawn to, you're attracted to, you're interested in.
Yeah, you see the wheels turning, because what you said right there just kind of was like, oh wow, because I have had some really vivid dreams about being a samurai and having a teacher, and I remember, and then someone came up to me and said, oh, you were Chinese in your past life. To me, and then it just makes me think like, why did we connect in this
well, and also you do acupuncture, so
yeah,
I mean,
that
was an obvious sign to me. It's like, okay, brother's doing acupuncture, it's obvious some kind of resonance there from somewhere.
So but when you were having these experiences, were you like, okay, this is a past life? Did you know, or were you?
It was as clear as day. I mean, I remember I was in a contemplation one time, and I actually was standing in the garden in Japan. There was our home was behind us. There were cherry blossoms floating through the air, and my wife was in a kimono in front of me. And I looked down. I had swords in my belt. And it was as real as me sitting here talking with you.
Wow.
So, I mean, I knew, okay. And I had to understand, of course, conceptually about past lives and reincarnation from my studies in metaphysics. But then I started to have experiences directly to confirm that. So I just thought, okay, well, this is no doubt, what's going on. So let me just see if I can take it to the next level.
Wow. And did you have help from spirit guides to develop this technique?
It's interesting you asked that. Yeah, I during my spiritual work, meditation, contemplation, I actually started to connect with spiritual masters that would guide me. In fact, I remember at one point, years later, when I was doing past life work, and I was still involved with Jung, I thought, and I was just starting to do past life work, and I was sort of letting go of the Jungian work that I was doing because I was finding the past life was more effective. But I still love who Jung was and what he did. And of course, soul is immortal. Soul doesn't die. And I just knew, okay, well, Jung is somewhere. It's like, I'd like to meet him. So I asked my guides if I could meet Jung. Do you know that I had an inner experience where they brought me, and I'm sitting at a table having a conversation with Carl Jung.
Wow.
And he looks at me and he says, he says, learn my work as well as you can, but you can go beyond what I did. And so don't limit yourself with what I did. Take it to the next level. And I remember thinking, oh, it's such a wise soul that he even instructed me to even go beyond where he was at. Right. So I felt blessed that I had that opportunity to have a one-on-one with Jung.
That's
even
amazing.
Years after he, of course, moved on.
And he decided to stay on the other side and just that's. So every soul doesn't need to come back into the.
It takes quite a bit of spiritual work to get to the point where you don't have to come back, and you have to realize time is a little different on the other side, and there are different levels of heaven, so to speak. And so, what we would consider a lifetime would be maybe like a very short period of time on the other side. So Jung may come back but he may stay on the other side for in our sort of chronology 50 or 100 years, and then come back, depending on what his mission is, what he needs to do, what he needs to learn, and so. But most of us actually, we're still learning sort of the basic fundamentals of living life and learning how to give and receive love and serve others. Most of society isn't operating at a level where they get to stay on the other side very long. They get sent right back because they have karmic conditions, karmic debts. Right. It's almost like you got debts to balance and repay from the actions you sort of were involved in this life, and so often the lords of karma send you right back, and you're born again, and you just have to continue. It's like repeating the first grade over and over. I like to give people the analogy, if they ever saw Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, where he relives the same day over and over. That's kind of how reincarnation is. And we have to relive lifetimes over and over until we figure out how to get it right in a way that reflects compassion, and recognize that we're all spiritual beings and we're not here to do harm to anybody.
Right.
But as you can see, the way society is, most people aren't there.
Yeah. Does it seem? Are we slowly all kind of leveling up together, or?
Only in groups, certain groups. You have a soul group that you connect with in this lifetime, and you guys will sort of be on a similar track. But other people, other groups are in different stages of evolution. Some souls come here just to learn the lessons of power and control, and they will have power and abuse it and take advantage of others, but that's what they need to learn in this lifetime, that you can't just do that without consequence, and then they'll come back in another life, and they're on the opposite end where, they're getting abused and controlled, so it takes, thousands of lifetimes for souls to wake up, and they kind of come back because you have karmic ties with certain souls from past lives, and so it's almost like your spiritual pod, your posse, and you all reincarnate maybe at the same time to continue your lessons, and eventually sometimes you will all graduate at a similar time, but it's still a very individual thing. It's not like everybody's going to sort of graduate at the same time. No, it's very individual.